Well, ubiquitous alcohol advertising in sports poses a considerable risk to children, according to a new study. Only one AFL club and one NRL club refuse to accept money from the advertising industry in alcohol. So, of the others, some have as many as 4 major contract deals with alcohol companies. Now, we're joined by Naomi Simson, founder of Red Balloon, and Greg Baxter from Newgate Communications for taking stock this evening. Thank you both very much for being with us. It's an interesting one, this. It seems to be a bit of a loophole in the sports world. Advertising when it comes to alcohol is kind of okay as long as it's on the back of a player. Greg, what do you think?
Well, I think we've got to change the rules completely. It's not just on television, it's on signage, it's on the players' outfits, it's ubiquitous. That study says that if you watched last year's grand final, you would have seen an alcohol-related message or a logo 3 times a minute.
A minute. Could not believe that figure when I saw it.
And so the debate up until now has largely been around should we have alcohol advertising during broadcasts. It's much broader than that. I think we need to fix that as well, because you can advertise an alcohol product in children's television viewing hours if it's part of a live sports program. Well, I think we've got to change that. But you've got to go back to the source. So get it off the jerseys, get it off the hoardings, just get it off everything.
I think also they've got to look at all of the addictive substances, not just alcohol, because there's a real conversation going on about the gambling. And how that is just inserted so deeply into the commentary around sport as well, and the impact that that is having on families. So if we think about alcohol advertising and the impact on potential families and how it influences them. So as we know, kids will mimic what they see, and if they're seeing it and it's become part of the vernacular. So, you know, there are restrictions around children's television, so why is sport excluded from children's television? It's a family game. That's what the sports commentators
it's a family game, so let's all have a drink.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because the people behind this study were saying, you know, our sports clubs have a real opportunity here to be part of the solution, to model healthy sponsorship. But the problem is, you know, New South Wales, for example, has debated this in the last, 18 months, 2 years or so. And the sporting bodies are the ones opposing the crackdown on this stuff.
It's driven by money.
It's too much money for them.
But they're so myopic. I mean, if you look at all the pre-season behaviour by the rugby league community, every single one of those was a result of intoxication.
Yeah.
Okay. And there was a report last year which I found extraordinarily disturbing, which was that the busiest night for police being called to domestic violence incidents, state of origin night.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
So you've got to assume that a lot of that's alcohol.
But hang on, if you go to the alcohol lobby and what they say about New South Wales restrictions, for example, it's that there's actually no evidence, they say in their research, that advertising causes young Australians to drink more, which makes you question, why are you advertising if there's no link to an increase in alcohol consumption? So, I mean,
I think it's a good smokescreen, because I think younger people are drinking less.
True, and they bring that up.
In fact,
people are
drinking less, on a per capita basis in almost every Western country. So they're probably spending all their money to fight for a bigger slice of a shrinking pie. But that doesn't justify having alcohol advertising or gambling advertising, I agree, in a place where it's normalised for kids.
Yeah, Naomi, to your point earlier, gambling, big issue, alcohol, big issue, junk food advertising is pretty heavy in that space as well. Sugar,
they've absolutely proven that there is a direct correlation that sugar is addictive, especially when combined with fat. So, and what we need, if we look at the obesity levels in young people in Australia, we need to get them out being fit. Now, sport as a role model, being fit, playing teams, and then it's the juxtaposition of the argument with sugar, addictive substances, and also addictive behaviour. We want our kids to be addicted to being superheroes and playing sport and hanging out with their mates and playing on the field. So if we could take away that negative, which is aligned with a positive, because, what do they call it? It's a sandwich. It's a good message with a bad message, and a child is left confused. And without parents who might be either role modelling or having a conversation about, well, that's a grown-up thing. And, when you're 18, routine, that's what you do. So also without context, it just goes into a subliminal level, and really we don't understand the impact that it's having. Then when it's reinforced in social media, which is also unregulated in terms of who is actually viewing that. So it's a reinforcement through a dopamine-induced digital media. So,
Yes,
and that's
because-
what happens when kids are continually flicking. It's actually driving the dopamine. So the addiction is happening, even though might not be having the substance, but they're getting addicted to that, and those messages.
Well,
are part of it.
people are also onto these influencers who are now, we're understanding there's a lot of alcohol kind of behind the scenes in the influencer, say, oh, your favourite, celebrity's holding that particular drink. I mean, that's all completely unregulated, and,
and in
people
the
are starting
online
to pick up on the
space,
power
which
of,
is
as you
where-
said, reinforcing that message,
That online space where gambling is flourishing, gambling promotion of one form or another is flourishing. You are getting a lot of addictive behaviour, and it's largely, not completely, but largely unregulated. And there's so many of these areas now that are still either unregulated or the regulation has failed to catch up. They've not kept pace at all, but failed to catch up with the sort of enforcements we need.
Right, we're going to move on now. Australian states are split on what their new police car should look like. Look, Queensland, WA and Northern Territory are going with the Kia Stinger. That's about $50,000 worth of car. But New South Wales and Victoria, they've got a little bit more expensive taste, Chryslers and BMWs, which they're kind of declining to say exactly how much they're getting these for, but they retail for around $120,000 in the case of the BMW 5 Series. Now that Australia no longer has a local car industry to support, Kia says that some states are showing, prejudice when it comes to picking the police cars. What do you think, Naomi?
Well, it's not just what I think, it's about pursuit policies. So every state, every police force, whether it's state or territory, has a pursuit policy. And that pursuit policy is determined by how they approach pursuit and what resources they need for that. And in that moment, they look at the risk factors, such as the weather, the time of day, the how built up it is, and so forth. And they also have policies around these things. So most police forces are quite risk averse now when it comes to pursuit. So one could argue, why do they need a 120 kilometre an hour? Because more than often than not, also the in the car on the radio will be their commanding officer, who is part of that, who's asking them for a situation report in real time, of which if anyone in that pursuit says, I feel at risk, or I think we're at risk, they have to pull it. So at that point, you say, well, what car do you really need? You need the functional one with the big boot, with the big back seat that can carry all of their gear and all of that.
The
so I
cup
guess
holders,
the real point behind
this
so really, and it's also about who owns these, because there's different policies. In Queensland, they own their own vehicles and they have to get a resale value. The way that New South Wales and Victoria deal with it is different. So I think it's about what is fit for purpose. It's not about where did the car come from. It's about what is it going to be used for, and it's not always pursuit.
That's just way too sensible.
I'll be the grown-up.
It's very informed, all of that, isn't it?
The highway pursuit vehicle needs to be, above all things, scary.
That's
The
right. What's
Stinger
it
is not
for?
scary.
It's not scary, okay.
It's got a scary name, but it's a craft beer car. The Chrysler looks scary, it sounds scary, and it's got the same agricultural engineering capabilities of the old Fords and Holdens.
So your pick's the Chrysler
There you
then?
Go the Chrysler.
Go the Chrysler. There you go.